While it's a less exciting option, I also think it's very possible that Evokers would get another spec that is primarily DPS, but just happens to offer a lot more support options than the Preservation or the Devastation spec. I can imagine a caster that focuses on earth-based abilities, or how about, I don't know, how about enchanting people with an earth armor thing that makes the buff target deal extra earth damage, and it absorbs damage taken. Hey, it's Alton, welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, where everything is okay because I'm telling you it is. Hit the like button, subscribe for more coverage, and this week is big with a new season and a huge patch coming our way. We're going to definitely talk up some highlights, so let's get right to it. Season 2 of Dragonflight has begun, unleashing the new raid, the PvP, and Mythic Plus season to the usual round of mixed reactions and takes. We expected a new set of dungeons, including one brand new to the Mythic Plus scene to have its share of retuning days into the season, and no doubt we can expect more in the coming days and weeks and, well, pretty much forever. Raids and PvP, pretty much the same deal. Actually, there's not too much mention on the usual fronts. What I really want to talk about today is the non-Big 3 content. Like, what about outdoor gameplay? What about the so-called casuals? Because things aren't looking all that great so far. Especially on the first day, realms were brought to their knees as players flooded into Ferox assaults, causing massive lag, which is not so unusual. What's unfortunate were numerous reports of Ferox just not showing up when he was supposed to, leaving entire shards to be non-functional. The same went for the expedition research event down in these derelict caverns. Every hour or so the event is supposed to spin up, but that too was met with bugs, like the event not happening at all, or objectives not appearing or progressing. Now this is what we call unplayable, leaving players to use the pre-made group tool to find a functioning shard or to otherwise just give up, which is super unfortunate. There are no buts. And yet I'm a professional rationalizer. The only saving solace here to be found comes from the fact that these events don't carry the same impact as Torghast or those tormented events from Shadowlands in the Maw. Those were linked directly to legendaries, player power, things that people kind of sort of needed, but more critically, they had no other source of these things. Now don't get me wrong, these 10.1 events, they should work, and players, rightfully, they should be disappointed. From my testing, Ferox assaults weren't even testable during most of the PTR, and the research event was roughly as buggy as it is now. With regards to player power though, these events are also only part of a larger scheme for non-Big 3 players, at least when we take a step back. Going on a tangent here, I want to talk a little bit about gameplay accessibility, which, thanks to Dragonflight, World of Warcraft as a whole, it's taken huge steps in that direction. Take, for example, crafting. It's not perfect, mixed tales all around. Some folks do not like how hard it is to level because of the social requirements, because it depends on your realm size and the traffic. And yet, before Dragonflight, if you did want a really powerful epic item made for you or crafted, there were all sorts of constraints, like we could only have one piece, or you had to be the crafter, or you needed soulbound materials, meaning that you had to run certain content that might not be your thing. Today, a top player can get materials from the activities that they do and get that epic spore cloak made. A not so top player can still get a weaker version of that cloak, at least it's level appropriate, or at least they're getting something at all. Without stepping into a raid or a dungeon, folks can get access to item level 424 gear by obtaining gear from either Ferox assaults or the research event, and the weekly event chests, including, and this was news to me, running random heroics. I thought that quest from last week was just temporary. I thought it was just temporarily replacing the weekly dungeon event, since that was going on during the preseason, but apparently it's a thing, giving folks easy access to champion level gear every week, at least if it sticks around. It caps at item level 424 unless you run higher level content to get the crests that you need, but my point is that there are lots of ways to gear, and while delays due to bugs are bad, at least we're not totally screwed. Another point of accessibility is what I had mentioned earlier, that there's no Torghast or a legendary-like thing that compels us to log in each and every day or week. I'm talking about player power here. Cosmetics are a different, and I'd say more personal grievance that I invite you to share. More than ever, players can simply play the game, pursue what interests them without the feeling of chores nagging at them. The agency of getting our character ready is just a few talent points away, and we can start our pursuit of gear or achievements or whatever it is that we want. I've been talking about this regularly. It's what I've been observing mostly. People be like, where's the content? Where are the relevant things to do? Because I have nothing to do. I'm tired of this routine of doing rares and events. And in case you're thinking that I'm complaining here, I at least want to be clear that I don't have strong opinions on this subject. Like for me, Dragonflight has been laying down the tracks at a good place. I dabble a little bit in everything, so I enjoy just living in this world. But like I said, I invite those of you who are bored or uninterested to share some takes and to focus on this. Like, what would whet your appetite? I've heard a couple of things like having a big one-shot zone like Suramar, or evergreenish updates like new Mage Tower challenges and rewards, basically harder single-player content, Brawlers Guild, where you at? So let me know what you think. Patch 10.1.5 news dropped like a sledgehammer with huge news that is really going to transform the world of Warcraft as we know it, and solidifying the fact that since Dragonflight there are no minor patches. Sure, the .1s, they bring in the new season and the raid and the zone and everything, but each patch has been bringing the thunder with big additions and changes. So we first gotta talk about the third spec coming to Evokers, Augmentation, which is, as predicted, a primarily DPS spec that relies on support-like abilities to increase the throughput of their allies or for themselves. The idea of a support role is pretty controversial and was reason enough for folks, including me, to be like, yeah, that's not gonna mess with the Holy Trinity, right? And yet here we are, learning about this spec that's meant to support allies. But is it really messing with the Trinity? Or is it just a different way to give throughput? Now, let's look at the signature abilities. Ebon Might is the bread and butter of the augmentation spec. It empowers exactly 4 allies for up to 15 or so seconds, preferring DPS, and it gives them primary stat based on the casters. Breath of Eons is basically Deep Breath. When they deal damage to enemies, it applies a debuff and will also auto-cast Ebon Might on, a number of players. The debuff makes it so that some of the damage that people with the Ebon Might buff deal will be applied to those targets when the debuff expires. A little bit hard to explain, but here's kind of an example. Imagine a big pool of mobs in a Mythic Plus dungeon. The Evoker Ebon Mights the team powers them up just before the pull. The DPS open up big while the Evoker does a Breath of Eon right away. The debuff expires, and then boom, all that damage coalesces together, becomes kind of an explosion, and all that came from the Evoker thanks to the team's efforts. That's the kind of vibe that you can expect from Augmentation Evokers, or Allvokers, or Augvokers. How about Augies? Anyway, this spec, the way that I see it, is less of a new role, and it is more like just a new take on DPS. Here's another example. There is a talent called Prescience. With a short cooldown, it can be applied to 2 people at once, or the same person with full uptime, I guess. It's quite cool with talents, but with this in mind, the immediate question is this another kind of power infusion situation? In a sense, yes, DPS will be fighting each other to get this debuff from the Evoker. Mechanically, it has a high chance of giving an Essence Burst proc, so this is going to be a big part of an All-Vokers rotation anyway, and according to the WoW team, they do intend for bonus damage dealt thanks to an Evoker. It should be reflected in combat logs. There's another ability called Blistering Scales. It's kind of a defensive. It gives armor with optional damage absorption, but it's also kind of an offensive. It can be spec'd to deal pretty high damage, and hopefully all of this is going to be tracked as Evoker damage if we're correct. From the looks of the talent tree, the benefits of an All-Voker are designed to be limited to a party-sized group rather than an entire raid, so it doesn't sound immediately harmful to have more than one Evoker of this type in a raid, but having 2 of them in a party? Okay, you don't want to have them sharing too many of the same talents. The reveal of Augmentation Evokers is a big deal, and it shows once again that the WoW team is not afraid to make bold moves, even if it was definitely planned, and even if it was definitely leaving our fellow Demon Hunter fans disenfranchised. Evokers gained a spec. Hunters lost and gained a spec. Okay, but what gives? The narrative in my head says that, yeah, this was the plan all along, while unfortunately back then, there was no such plan for Demon Hunters. Demon Hunter casters Sure, maybe it could have been a thing from the very start, but maybe a leather-wearing Fel mage just couldn't pan out. I do have a prediction though. It might not be soon, but at some point, maybe demons are going to be a big deal once again. The Illidari are probably going to ask for help taking on this new threat, meaning new recruits who are willing to sacrifice everything, and new ways to fight the demons. When it comes to race class combinations, demon hunters as well as druids, sadly, they're at the back of the line, like it or not, due to the work that needs to be put into making druid forms appropriate for the remaining races, and demon forms suitable for basically every non-elf race. Now, could a new spec come at the same time? If it makes sense, absolutely. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, please, but the only reasons that I've heard in favor of a third spec for Demon Hunters is that there are only 2 specs, and I don't think that's good enough. Speaking of race class combos, it turns out that I was right about something again, and Warlocks are in fact the next class in line to get the all-race treatment. So who was left? We had Night Elves, Draenei, Lightforged Draenei, Pandaren, Kultiran, Tauren, High Mountain Tauren, Mag'har Orcs, and Zandalari Trolls. Now, some of these races, they could swing it, like Night Elves and Zandalari Trolls, sure, like not everyone grows up to be a light-fearing goody-goody. However, Mag'har, they're indoctrinated to be like Fel is bad, and Lightforged Draenei, they're kind of built that way. They definitely made a choice. Okay, maybe they made a choice. For the sake of, again, gameplay accessibility, I think that this is a great move that we knew was going to happen after it's been said numerous times over the past year or so. We're getting closer to a realm where there's got to be an explanation as to why a certain race can now do a certain something, and we're really close to that with Warlocks, but also not really. The likes of Mag'har Orcs and Lightforged Draenei can't forever be tethered to their upbringing, can they? Players are now empowered to answer that question. And if there are those who have a problem with tentacle-faced, goat-legged people from another planet who can summon demons, well, that's kind of their problem. They can go up to those Draenei or those Tauren Warlocks and tell them to their face that they're an abomination, and let's see how well that blows over. Be the race and class that you want, although, well, let's start off with race, because all allied race restrictions are being lifted with the exception of having a level 40 character on your account. Woo! Mount training is also going to be completely free as well, including 310 flying speed, which is great because I don't even know how many characters I just skipped. I never bothered buying faster flying with, so woohoo. Like I said earlier, 10.15 is a transformative patch, with one of the biggest changes being dragon riding in the old world. Data mining and in-game tooltips have revealed that mounts can be in different states: static, which is old world flying, and dynamic, which is dragon riding. There's a long list of mounts that have been rigged up for dragon riding, including nether drakes, proto-drakes, the firehawk from Firelands, the Silverian Dreamer from the in-game shop, and many more dragon-like mounts. And if that's not convincing enough for you, there are achievements already on the PTR for completing dragon races in what looks to be every zone on Kalimdor, with Eastern Kingdom zones found through data mining. This is really exciting. The world of Warcraft is about to get that much smaller, with triple the flight speed that we're used to in the old world, and thank goodness. Most of you have felt the sting of one moment zipping around the Dragon Isles, and then when it's time to maybe do some old Mog runs, it's like, I really hope it's not long before we see dragon riding and races everywhere, like in Pandaria or Nazjatar or Storm Peaks. This, I think, is a great step towards making the old world feel alive, at least with the air traffic, and it gives me this excited and nostalgic feeling of it's gonna feel like zipping around the old locations, like once upon a time I was down there, right? And then not so long ago I was cruising through at super low speed, and now I'm just zooming right by. Dragon racing is a great start, but also it brings up a couple of concerns. Lots of folks are looking forward to an updo, a second Cataclysm, as an excuse to give the old world look feel that's similar to the Dragon Isles, and adding dragon racing to the old world can be seen as a reason that it won't happen. With how things have been looking lately though, Never say never. Naxx is not waiting to return to relevance though, that's for sure. Also in this patch, Naxx is getting the same treatment as Zul'Gurub during 10.0.7. Old world enthusiasts and gold makers can complete special requirements which will allow them to learn new old recipes to craft new old gear for big money. I think after ZG this looks to be a pretty successful formula in that it's getting money to exchange hands and it's deep enough of a system that not everyone is just jumping in on it either. There is a ton more to learn about in the coming weeks, like the revamps that are coming to mages and holy paladins, a new mega dungeon that seems like it's going to explore the origins of the infinite Dragonflight, some good old quest content, these public event time things, and something that we haven't heard anything about yet, returning player improvements. Like, is that a way to get more folks to come back to the game, or is it feedback from people who have come back to the game and they're like, hey, you know, this and that could be improved? And then of course, there's the when of this patch. Season 2, it just started, but if Season 1 is of any indicator, 10.1.5 could come as soon as late June. It's not very long from now at all, so cross your fingers and hope that by then the Farak Assault and the research event are working. And that's the show. Not everyone who watches videos like these, recaps and, you know, news and whatnot, not all of them are currently playing WoW. Those reasons are entirely their own, but they're still gonna pop in to see like what's up or otherwise to try to live the experience through others. Now, believe it or not, it's never my intent to blindly shill, but to share my thoughts and feelings and takes based on my experiences, and to open myself up to discussion or pushback so we can all come away knowing that we're trying to listen to each other. And I feel that right now is one of those moments where it's just great to be in the moment as a World of Warcraft player. It's been feeling especially good to be a part of this world, this community right now, where I can simply log in and start pursuing goals instead of chores to prep my character with, you know, years worth of stuff to collect and customize for myself, where the tedious things are being shaved away, from some of the barriers of character customization to playing with friends, cross-faction, to having a sense of accomplishment regardless of how much I play or how skilled I am. And there's always something around the corner. There's the weekly event, whatever that is. There's a new set of stuff on the trading post. There's a patch on the horizon, whether you analyze the build changes, you know, week after week or not. As a creator, I feel overwhelmed trying to present everything to you, and I often fail to do that. But as a fan, I feel comforted in a way because in the almost 19 years that I've been in this game, I've seen and felt the ups and downs, and this Dragonflight thing, it's not just a reach to make up to its longtime players, it's just a fun expansion. It's a fun Warcraft experience for people who are jumping in brand new. Do not buy this expansion if you have doubts or you still feel burned from the past. I get it, I heard it all. But if you're on the fence, it's on sale. It's on sale and it ends soon. Some would say Blizz is getting desperate, and I don't disagree. But also, so what? World of Warcraft wants you back, and it has, in many ways, let go of that old school sense of pride. They're really trying to make this game for the fans, and now the next step is to show its love to its workers. Boom! So for now, let's wrap things up with a huge thanks to everyone who came to visit me over the past couple of weeks for some really long streams, from morning coffee to raid nights, still with the coffee. And thanks to the growing Twitch family, again, I appreciate you. To our patrons, our few and the mighty, you folks are wonderful, and let's give a warm welcome to new patron Pamela. Thanks for your pledge, and thank you, viewer. You made it to the end, you fed the algorithm, and you're almost there. Just hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe for more WoW content, and if you already are, just tell someone else to do it too, and because it helps me a lot. Catch me live on Twitch, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.